Hi, everyone. Vasu VParty here, live with you on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This is the VPartySports Podcast for this Tuesday afternoon, a little bit after 3 o'clock on the East Coast, 12 o'clock on the West Coast. Welcome into this Tuesday afternoon show. What a weekend we had in sports. We had the Daily Post yesterday. We didn't have a show yesterday with Martin Luther King Day. NBA wall-to-wall all morning here on the West Coast, all the way through the evening. The NCAA, the Wildcard game in the NFL, which turned out to be a dud. We'll get to all that in a minute, but want to give you a shout out here. The next show that we'll have is Thursday, 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific. We'll preview the whole divisional weekend. The NBA, NCAA, NHL starts to swing into gear about halfway through each of the pro leagues in the NBA, NHL conference play, about 10 games in by the time this weekend rolls through. And then the Daily Post will be at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific, every day weekday, 11 o'clock on the weekends, 8 a.m. on the West Coast. All right. Would love to have your comments on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at VPartySports. You can reach me there. If you're looking for sponsorship inquiries for your sports bar, for your restaurant, or your business of any kind, let me know directly. See what we can do with the VParty Sports and a conglomeration of your business as well. We're great at sports bars. People with all their action, their daily fantasy sports, their wagering. You get it all here on the VParty Sports Podcast. All right. Coming up, the NBA, the NCAA, big Martin Luther King days yesterday. The NHL also played all day as well, too. But let's start with the National Football League. Wildcard weekend is over. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were those Tampa Bay Buccaneers last night? They certainly weren't the ones that won the NFC South, although let's face it, the NFC South was not very good, and Tampa Bay won that division at 8-9. It reminded me of the Seahawks winning a few years back, except the Seahawks had the home game, and they trounced to New Orleans. Here, the Dallas Cowboys, who had the better record, they ended up at 12-5, 2 games back of the Eagles in the NFC East, and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as we said, 8-9 in terms of the NFC South. So they match up in Tampa last night, and boy, did Dallas come out on fire. This was not the same Dallas team that played against Washington 2 weeks ago. Tampa Bay got beaten up Monday night versus Dallas. Tom Brady looked awful. A lot of that credited to the Dallas pressure. Offensive line couldn't protect. I knew it was going to be a bad night for Tampa Bay, and I really thought Tampa Bay was going to win this. This is the playoffs. This is the time for Tom Brady to shine. The terrible year that they've had, albeit they were better than the other 3 teams in the NFC South in Carolina, New Orleans, and Atlanta. Of course, they had a chance to lose out with Carolina playing hot toward the end of the year, but the comeback win against Carolina in Week 17 enabled them to win the division. So that's where they got the home game. Cowboys couldn't catch the Eagles, so they ended up with a 5th seed, a 4-4 record on the year overall during the regular season. But boy, they came out this week and played like gangbusters. That defensive line, Micah Parsons, the secondary, all over those receivers for Tampa Bay. It ended up being a 31-14 victory for the Cowboys over the Buccaneers. The box score looks like this. Dak Prescott, 4 touchdown passes, only sacked once, 143 rating, 305 yards, 9.2 yards per attempt. Pollard had 77 yards rushing for the Cowboys. He led them. Ezekiel Elliott had 27 yards. And Dak Prescott had the quarterback run from about 4 yards out that got the touchdown for them, the only rushing touchdown. And then 4 passing touchdowns. The Prescott run went for 1 yard on the outside. Totally fooled everybody. That was a 4th down run for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. And at the time, it gave them a bigger lead. So 305 yards, 4 touchdowns. They went two to Dalton Schultz, who was wide open down the middle. CeeDee Lamb had 1. Michael Gallup, wide open down the right side, had 1 also. 305 yards, 25 completions, 12 yards a completion, 4 touchdowns. They did not lose any fumbles on offense. Defensively, they hit Tom Brady 6 times. They forced 2 interceptions. 1 interception, the Jaron Kearse interception in the end zone. I knew it was going to be a bad night when Tom Brady threw the interception in the red zone. He has never thrown a red zone interception in his life. The Tampa Bay defense could not stop Prescott, the running game was outstanding, 128 yards rushing for Dallas on 35 carries, 24 of those by Prescott, 27 by Elliott. Tony Pollard clearly has taken over as the number one back. Ezekiel Elliott cannot blow through those holes like he used to, and he was used sparingly, but he was used for the power runs toward the goal line and in the red zone before Pollard came in for the long runs. He had an 18-yard run. Dak Prescott had an 11-yard run. Tampa Bay just couldn't stop him. Look at the Buccaneers box score. 351 yards, 66 pass attempts. Like a starting pitcher, you're going to have to get your arm iced, TB12. But, boy, the defense was just all over him. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. If you got that touchdown, instead of throwing a red zone INT, you would have had the lead. The game may have been different. You were 3-point underdogs coming in, actually 2.5 where it ended. This was your chance to move on, take on San Francisco after the Giants won over the weekend. We'll get to the rest of the wildcard weekend in a second. But what happens now with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers? Well, they're just going to have to figure it out. They just fired Byron Leftwich. That came across this morning after I had these graphics set up. So Byron Leftwich got fired by Tampa Bay. Todd Bowles still there. The Glazer family going to try and figure out what to do with this offense. They clearly need more offense. They didn't score very much at all during the year, and it showed yesterday. And the defense did not come out to play. Chris Godwin had 10 catches. Julio Jones, 7 for Tampa Bay. Mike Evans had 6. And then Otten, who was really good at tight end, hope they keep him. He's a stalemate for them for the rest of the year. Russell Gage got hurt toward the end. He had 2 catches for 10 yards. He had a concussion and a back injury. He had to be carted off last night when the game was over. About 2 minutes left to go. Rushing-wise, 52 yards on 12 carries for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They only ran the ball 12 times, 66 pass attempts for Brady. Defensively, they did not get to Prescott. They did hit him 5 times. They only sacked him once, and that was Vita Vea. Early in the game, Dallas went out on three straight plays, 2 possessions in a row, and he thought that was going to be the impetus for the way the game started. But then for some reason, Prescott started finding his way down the field. Dalton Schultz wide open down the right seam for that first touchdown, and you knew it was going to be bad. And then the missed extra points were the only thing that were bad for Dallas yesterday. 3 missed extra points in a row by Brett Maher. He did get one later. He did kick a field goal. So that's how it ended up in Tampa Bay, 31-14. The final score, it went Schultz for 22, Prescott for 1, Schultz for 11, 3 missed extra points, 18-0. Gallup in the third quarter, 2-yard pass. And then Julio Jones, a 30-yard pass. They didn't convert the 2-point conversion. CeeDee Lamb put it away in the fourth quarter with the 18-yard touchdown. He's wide open. Somehow the defense got lost on that CeeDee Lamb touchdown. And then Cameron Brate got an 8-yard pass from Brady. They converted the 2-point conversion with Mike Evans to end up with a final score of 31-14. They did get the onside kick with 2 minutes to go. They had a chance maybe if they got the onside kick and they had a chance to maybe score a touchdown. Then you never know. It is Tom Brady. It is the GOAT. But they didn't look anything far from great yesterday. Last night, 31-14 in Tampa Bay. The playoffs are all set for the divisional weekend, but let's run through the rest of the wild cards. You see the lines for tonight, the NBA, the NCAA, basketball, the NHL lines as well, too. We'll get to the NFL games in a second, but let's get to the rest of the wild card weekend. The Jacksonville Jaguars on Saturday night, we know they came back from 27-0 down. Lawrence had 4 first-half interceptions. Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could have used the playbook that Jacksonville had, but they couldn't come back last night. 31-30, Riley Patterson, the game-winning field goal from 36 yards out. In that game, Justin Herbert had 273 yards, 1 touchdown. Lawrence was 288, 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. A second half that was unbelievable. By the way, Mike Lombardi, not Mike Lombardi, what's his name? Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, the great-grandson of Vince Lombardi, he was fired as well by the Los Angeles Chargers this morning as well, too, or yesterday morning, for not being able to develop Herbert or being able to advance his talent. Justin Herbert has a lot of talent, and that second half did not show any of that talent. Jacksonville was allowed to come back. Evan Ingram had 7 catches for 93 yards. Kirk had 8 for 78. Zay Jones, 8 for 74. 3 for 29 for Marvin Jones. All 4 of them scored the touchdowns, 1 each. Ingram, Kirk, Jones, and and Marvin Jones Jr., Zay Jones and Marvin Jones Jr. Chargers, they had a big first half. 2 touchdowns by Eckler, 1 receiving touchdown by Everett, 24-0. At that point, Gerald Everett, the tight end, 6 catches, 109 yards. Keenan Allen went off in the first half, but they couldn't stop him. But they stopped him in the second half. 6 catches, 61 yards total. Only 25 completions for Justin Herbert. They ran 23 times for 67 yards. Eckler with the 2 touchdowns. Kelly had 20 yards. Justin Herbert had 3 rushes for 12 yards. The kick return game took a little bit of a backward step with DeAndre Carter being injured for the game, and that hurt their wide receiver. That hurt their passing game as well, too. Defensively, Asante Samuel was outstanding. 3 interceptions for 20 yards. Drew Tranquill, the first interception of the game, was on a deflected pass, double deflection, double doink, as they say, off a helmet, off of a hand, and Tranquill had it, and that gave the Chargers a 7-0 lead on the way to their 27-0 lead in the first half. But Jacksonville comes back and wins 31-30 over LA. The Chargers are eliminated, and Jacksonville moves on. San Francisco 49ers, they were down 17-16 at the half. Little nerves for Brock Purdy, the rookie quarterback, is now 6-0, 1-0 in the playoffs, 3 touchdowns passing, 1 rushing touchdown. McCaffrey, 119 yards rushing. Samuel, 6 catches, 133 yards with 1 touchdown. That 74-yard touchdown. The defense had 3 sacks and 1 interception. The interception was by Diamador Lenoir. 1 interception. That was late in the game when the game was already decided. But here's what the box score showed for the 49ers. Did not do very much in the first half. They got off to a 10-0 lead. But Seattle came back and give Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, what a year he's had, and DK Metcalf and Lockett, and they just didn't have the running game. But Purdy, 332 yards once he got going in the second half. 3 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 4 carries for 16 yards. McCaffrey had 119 yards. There's your key, Dallas. Stop McCaffrey, and then the other weapons fall in line. Samuel had 32 yards rushing as well, including a 22-yard run. Mason had 12 yards. Elijah Mitchell came back, 9 carries for 2 touchdowns. Receiving-wise, Mitchell and McCaffrey each got a touchdown out of the backfield, and then Deebo Samuel, 74-yard touchdown in the second half, started the 49er comeback and actually kept it going. 6 catches, 133 yards. Ayuk had a 31-yard pass play, 3 carries, 3 catches, 73 yards as well there too. Nick Bosa recovered a fumble. They hit Russell Wilson twice. They didn't really get to him very much. They sacked him 3 times. 2 by Omenihu, and then 1 by Eric Armstead. The fumble, he caused the fumble that Bosa recovered. They were able to go in and score. So there you have it, the 49ers and the Seahawks, 41-23, Seattle. Seattle loses to San Francisco. They got in thanks to the Detroit Lions winning. Would have been different if Green Bay had come in. Not sure how they would have done against the 49ers, but a different scenario set up for the 49ers and Packers. Geno Smith, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Walker, 63 yards. Smith was second in Dallas, and 13 yards. DJ Dallas, 13 yards, 104 yards rushing, and a touchdown. Metcalf was outstanding, 10 catches, 136 yards. But after that, it was Lockett for 6 carries, 6 catches, 39 yards. But they kept everybody in front of them, did the 49ers defense. 253 yards passing. They lost the fumble. That was the Geno Smith fumble late in the game that Bosa recovered, turned it into a touchdown. Defensively, they just got run over in the second half. No other way to say it. Punt returns, no punt returns for them. Jason Myers made a 56-yard field goal that gave them their last lead, 17-16 at the half. All right, so that's your Saturday wildcard results. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the San Francisco 49ers, they'll move on. Who else is in the wild card? Who else is in the wild card game Sunday, and who else is moving on? We'll have that story for you in about 30 seconds as the VPartySports Podcast continues for this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome in on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Love to see your comments. Look forward to hearing from you as well. You see the lines going across for Tuesday's action. We'll have our best bet segment for you as well. I'm Vasti Vadaparty. This is the VPartySports Podcast. We'll be back in 30 seconds with the rest of the NFL Wildcard Weekend. Welcome back to the VParty Sports Podcast. Vasu Vadaparty, your host here for this Tuesday afternoon, a little bit after 3 o'clock on the East Coast, about 3:15, 12:15 out here on the West Coast. Finally, some good weather out here on the West Coast. I know some of you are still struggling down in the Southeast and up in the upper Northeast as well. But we've got football weather going on this week. The Wildcard weekend took place. Tuesday's action, you see the bottom line there with all the college games, the NBA games, and the NHL games as well. Jacksonville and San Francisco on Saturday win and advance into the divisional round. Who else went in? Well, let's start with the Buffalo Bills. Coming off their high after DeMar Hamlin recovers, flew back to Buffalo, watched the game from home. Might be at the game this weekend against Cincinnati. Don't want to give it away yet, but we don't know if he's going to be there or not, but what a lift that would be. The game against the Dolphins, a lot closer than a lot of people thought. Buffalo, a 14-point favorite as the line closed, 44.5. They win 34-31. Give credit to Mike McDaniel. Give credit to the Miami Dolphins. Skylar Thompson was in for a world of hurt, the third-string quarterback, but he played well. 220 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. The first one, you looked like it was going to be a snowball when it was 3-0 Buffalo, and then the interception, the succeeding touchdown that got them a 10-0 lead by James Cook, a 12-yard run. Dawson Knox had the 7-yard touchdown. Actually, it was 14-0 to start the game by Buffalo, and it looked like it was going to be all Buffalo. Then Tyler Bass, a field goal from 33, made it 17-0. Sanders got a field goal from 40. Sanders got a field goal from 48. Sanders got a field goal from 37. Mike Gesicki, a 7-yard touchdown pass with the 2-point conversion after a Buffalo Bills turnover. In the red zone, Josh Allen threw a long pass. Xavier Howard made the play. He was able to run it back into Buffalo territory. That's when Gesicki got the 7-yard touchdown from Skylar Thompson and Tyreek Hill, the 2-point conversion, 17-17. Then Josh Allen turned the ball over again, and that led to another possession for Miami. They couldn't do anything with it, but then they kicked off, and then Tyler Bass got a 39-yard field goal at the half to make it 20-17. First play of the second half, Josh Allen fumbled in his own territory. Zach Seiler recovered it, 5-yard fumble return that made it 24-20. Then Beasley got a touchdown from 6 yards out. Gabe Davis from 23 yards out. What a catch that was if you saw it. Made it 34-24. And then Jeff Wilson got the touchdown at 10:53 to go in the fourth, 34-31. But Buffalo's defense was able to stiffen at that point. You look at the box score, Skylar Thompson, 220, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Jeff Wilson, 23 yards rushing. He had the 1 touchdown, 10 carries. They only rushed for 42 yards on 20 carries. Really, the longest run of the day for that group was 8 yards. They even tried to incorporate Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in that mix, but they couldn't get anything going. Waddle 1 carry for 8 yards. Tyreek Hill 2 carries for 5 yards. The funny thing about the whole day was Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they had drop passes. I have never seen that many drop passes in my life. Tyreek Hill was targeted 15 times, probably 3 drops. He had 7 catches for 69 yards. Salvon Ahmed, 3 catches for 45 yards out of the backfield. Jalen Waddle had 2 drops when they were moving down the field. 3 catches, 44 yards for him. And then Smythe Gesicki had the touchdown. Cedric Wilson Jr., 1 catch. Jeff Wilson Jr. for 1 catch. But outside of that, it was really nothing. 18 completions for 220 yards, 12 yards per reception. Targeted 42 times, but only 18 completions. That's not good. And they did have the 2 interceptions. Xavier Howard, Javon Holland's interception led them to make the game close again. And then from that point forward, it was a close game. Miami had a chance on 4th down. Don't know what they were thinking on 4th and 1. They used all their timeouts. Play clock ran out. They got to delay a game, and then they were unable to convert on 4th down. Buffalo with 2 kneels, and the game was over, 34-31. Miami has covered against Buffalo all 3 times this year. They won the first game in week 3 on the Josh Allen 4th down non-conversion. Tyler Bass kicked the game-winning field goal in week 16 on a Thursday night. Yeah, on a Thursday night. Week 15 on a Thursday night. And then they won 32-29, did not cover there. And they only won by 3. I told you, 2 touchdown favorites, anything over a touchdown, especially in the playoffs, is going to be very tough for NFL teams to cover. We'll get to the lines in a second for this weekend. The early lines coming out for the divisional games, the 4 games this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. The New York Giants, not really an upset in my book. A lot of people thought the Minnesota Vikings were on upset watch. 10 games, won with 1 possession or less of a score, 8 fourth-quarter comebacks. You thought they had a chance to come back in the fourth quarter again, but Daniel Jones and the New York Giants, what a game they played, 31-24. Brian Dable, if he doesn't get votes for head coach of the year, if he doesn't win it, then there's got to be some kind of investigation. There's a lot of good coaches. He and Doug Peterson, Dan Campbell of the Detroit Lions, who, by the way, was very funny last night on with Peyton and Eli on ESPN2 last night. It was very funny to listen to Dan Campbell talk about his team and talk about the future and his enthusiasm, let's just say, for the game. But anyway, if you get a chance to YouTube that, go ahead. It's pretty funny. Eli Manning and Dan Campbell were teammates with the New York Giants. So they were talking about Tom Coughlin and the snow games and the cold weather games, etc. Anyway, that's beside the point. The New York Giants, a 31-24 win over the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. It went Kirk Cousins, got him off big, 7-0 with the 1-yard touchdown run. If you had Justin Jefferson as your daily fantasy player, a prop bet for first touchdown, he was so close to cashing in that ticket for you, but they marked him down inside the 1-yard line. Kirk Cousins ran it in. Then the Giants just moved down the field. It was an offensive juggernaut in the first half. Saquon Barkley, a 28-yard run. Isaiah Hodgins, former Buffalo Bill, 14-yard pass. Graham Gano, field goal that made it 17-7. Then Osborne came back before the half with a touchdown, 9-yard pass from Cousins. And then Daniel Bellinger, very unheralded rookie tight end for the Giants, 9-yard pass from Jones. Irv Smith Jr. caught the touchdown from Cousins and made it 24-21. Then the field goal from Greg Joseph that tied it. Minnesota had a tough time with converting on third downs yesterday on Sunday because they had chances to score touchdowns, false starts, penalties, a weird 3rd-and-1 play where they tried to run a flea flicker with Justin Jefferson coming end around and throwing back to Cousins. A 3-yard loss forced them to punt. They had already been moving the ball. If they had gone down and scored there, it would have been something else. And then Saquon Barkley used all of his strength for a 2-yard run for the game-winning touchdown. Giants had to hold off the Vikings. 4th and 8 play. Cousins only goes 5 yards. The pressure got to him a little bit. Only able to get a 3-yard pass play. Turnover there. Timeouts were done. And the Giants move on as the 6th seed. Although a lot of people, again, like I said, myself included, thought that this was going to be not so much of an upset if the Giants did beat Minnesota, which they did. Going inside the numbers now with the Giants and the Minnesota Vikings, Daniel Jones, 301 yards passing, 78 yards rushing, 2 passing touchdowns, 15-yard run for his longest run. Isaiah Hodgins has become the number 1 guy, 8 catches, 105 yards. The touchdown from 18 yards out. Darius Slayton, 4 catches for 88 yards, including a long of 47 yards. Barkley had 5 catches out of the backfield and really came close to scoring a touchdown as well, too. Bellinger had the other touchdown, 2 catches for 17 yards. Field goals, it was they lost a fumble. They fumbled, but they did not lose it. So they were able to hold on to the ball as well, too. And field goals, let's see what we got here. Field goals, the kicking game was good. You had Graham Gano, 25-yard field goal, and then 4 extra points for him as well. So the kicking game was good, and the kickoff game was good as well, too, for the Giants. They held Minnesota to no kick return yardage because they've got a very, 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 very good kick returner. They've got a very good kick return. I'm sorry, I'm just looking it up here as we're going along here. I want to see the Vikings kick returns. Kene Nwangu has already had a touchdown this year, but he was only limited to 1 return for 24 yards. And that's big, too, because then you start the Giants defense out deep in Minnesota's territory, the 25-yard line or behind, and that takes care of them, too. And they couldn't even get a punt return game going as well. Greg Joseph was good on field goals. He made the 38-yard field goal, but it was not to be. The Minnesota Vikings get upset 31-24. Giants a 3-point underdog. The game was at 48 for the total, 48.5. Game went over at 55 with the Barkley touchdown to close it out and to give the game winner to the Giants. So the Giants will move on to next weekend. The final game Sunday night, the Baltimore Ravens, they should have won this game. They had every opportunity to win this game. They lose to the Bengals 24-17. They've lost twice out of 3 times in playing them, division rivals. The game winner on a 98-yard fumble return by Sam Hubbard, the defensive lineman, when Baltimore was moving in for the lead. It was 17-17, and for some reason, Tyler Huntley tried to go up top with the rush above, jumping up above the line. Don't know how he was going to accomplish that. Looked like the running backs and the wide receivers, tight ends that were behind were going to push him from behind, but he went up high, and so they couldn't push him. The ball got knocked out, ended up in the hands of Hubbard, and before you know it, the big defensive lineman was chugging his way down, I say. 98 yards the other way for the go-ahead touchdown. Baltimore was +8 in this game. You figured that may do it for Baltimore, because if the Bengals get the ball again, they're moving the ball pretty well all day, but the Ravens defense was outstanding. They were able to hold Cincinnati to 24 points, 17 points on offense to 7 by Sam Hubbard. We go inside the numbers with the Bengals and the Ravens. Tyler Huntley, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. J.K. Dobbins, 62 yards. Huntley had 54 yards. Gus Edwards had 39 yards. They didn't rush for any touchdowns. 155 yards rushing against the Cincinnati defense. I don't think they're going to worry too much about Buffalo rushing the ball on them, but you got to watch out for Josh Allen. When he's carrying the ball, that's a load. Mark Andrews, 5 catches, 73 yards. Demarcus Robinson had the long touchdown, 2 catches, 49 yards, 41 of it on the touchdown. J.K. Dobbins had the other receiving touchdown. He had 4 catches for 43 yards. Oliver, Edwards, Watkins, Justice Hill, they tried to get as well too, but they couldn't do that. 2 fumbles by the Ravens, 1 lost. That was the Huntley fumble. He also recovered the other fumble that was lost as well. Tyler Lindbaum fumbled as well too. So there you have it. The Ravens on their side, the Bengals, Joe Burrow, 209 yards. He was sacked 4 times. Ravens really put pressure on him. Look for Buffalo to do the same as well too. 209 yards, 1 touchdown. They didn't run the ball, only 51 yards, team rushing, 39 of it by Joe Mixon. Joe Burrow had the 4-yard touchdown. 1-yard touchdown, I believe it was. Let's see what we got here. Joe Burrow had the 1-yard touchdown run. He had a long of 4, and that gave the Bengals a 17-10 lead before Demarcus Robinson came back and tied the game up at 17, and then the fumble ensued. So the Bengals win, the Giants win, the Bills win. Saturday, the Jaguars win in unbelievable fashion, and the 49ers win. And then last night, the Cowboys win as well. So that sets it up for divisional weekend. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the Kansas City Chiefs, Saturday afternoon, 4:30 Eastern. Let's get to the lines here. We have all the NFL lines right now. Divisional weekend, Kansas City comes out as a 9-point favorite, 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific on Saturday on NBC. That's in Kansas City. They're the 1 seed. The 1 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles, they play Saturday night. They're going to host the New York Giants. 7.5-point favorites, 48 the total, 8:15 Eastern on Fox. And then on Sunday, Buffalo will host Cincinnati. Buffalo, an early 5-point favorite, 48 the total. That's at 3 o'clock on CBS, 12 o'clock on the West Coast. And then the San Francisco 49ers, reliving the old days. For somebody that grew up in the Bay Area, reliving the old days of 49ers Cowboys. Of course, they played last year. The 49ers beat them in overtime last year, 20-17, behind Garoppolo on their way to an NFC Championship run. After their ass kicking of Seattle last weekend in the second half, they're going to get a very hot Dallas Cowboys team. The line a little low. I thought this was going to be a 5-point spread for the San Francisco 49ers. This defense a lot different than the Tampa Bay defense. But 3.5 is the line for San Francisco. Dallas, the underdog coming in for Sunday, 46.5 the total. 6:30 Eastern on Fox Sunday afternoon, 3:30 out here on the West Coast. So there's your Saturday matchups and Sunday matchups for divisional weekend. The 2 winners of each conference will play the following Sunday in the conference championship. Let's see who's first here. The NFC championship game is first. The AFC championship game is second. And mind you, don't forget, I don't know if I have that graphic up, but if it ends up being Kansas City and Buffalo, that's the game, because Buffalo didn't have 17 games. That's the game that's going to be the only scenario where they're going to be playing at a neutral site, with it being the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, the home of the Atlanta Falcons. Two outdoor teams are going to play indoors. I don't know how that works, but if it's Buffalo, Kansas City, that's the only scenario that's going to happen, where it's going to be on a neutral field, and Kansas City will be the 1 seed, Buffalo will be the 2 seed. But because of the canceled Monday night game between Buffalo and Cincinnati, they are not going to play that at somebody's home. They're going to play that at a neutral site, kind of like a Super Bowl setting. So if you're in Atlanta, you might have a chance to see an AFC Championship game with a team that's not involved, like the Falcons or any Southeast team down there. So that's going to be very interesting. All right. When we come back, the NFL is all set for next weekend. We'll go in detail with the NFL divisional weekend on Thursday and Friday, and Saturday and Sunday as well. But the NBA, NCAA, NHL, a big Monday, Martin Luther King Day. We'll review that a little bit, and we'll talk NHL as well. We'll preview tonight's games, tonight's action, give you a couple of best bets to whet your appetite before the best bet segment this afternoon, 6 Eastern, 3 o'clock on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Vasi Vadaparty. This is the VPartySports Podcast for this Tuesday. You can reach me at VPartySports, and send me your comments. Send me what you thought about the weekend. Send me what you thought about the NBA, NHL, or NCAA basketball as well, too. Back in 30 seconds to wrap it up with the NBA, NCAA, NHL, and a couple of best bet segments. Welcome back to the VPartySports Podcast for this Tuesday afternoon, about half past the hour on the East Coast, 3 o'clock, 3:30 on the East Coast, 12:30 here on the West Coast. What a weekend we had in the NFL. Wildcard weekend, Super Wildcard weekend is now over. We go into the divisional round. Once again, let me give you the divisional weekend setup. Kansas City, a 9-point favorite versus Jacksonville, 53. The total, Jacksonville beat the Chargers in comeback fashion Saturday night. They are the lowest seed. They will go play as the 1 seed Kansas City on Saturday afternoon at 4:30, 1:30 on the West Coast. The Giants beat Minnesota, small upset in some people's eyes. They will go play the number 1 seed, Philadelphia Eagles. They'll play for the third time this year. Philadelphia has won both games. 7.5 for the Eagles, 48 the total. That's at 8:15 Saturday night. Sunday, Buffalo Bills beat up on Miami a little bit. They did not cover 14. They won by 3. Too many mistakes by the Bills against the Dolphins. They play the Cincinnati Bengals, who really got shut down by the Ravens offensively. They're going to have to do better against the Buffalo defense, who ball hawks, and they're going to have to get pressure on Burrow. 48 the total. Buffalo, 5-point favorite. 3 o'clock Eastern Sunday on CBS. And then San Francisco and Dallas, a glory matchup of yesteryear gone by. 49ers, a 3.5-point favorite after their win over Seattle. And then Monday night, Dallas really tore apart Tampa Bay. They go west now to take on the 49ers as a 3.5-point underdog, 46.5 the total. That game is 6:30 on Fox, 3:30 out here on the West Coast. So you're all set up for divisional weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Don't forget, we'll be back on Thursday. We'll give you a little taste each day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, of NFL divisional weekend, as the 2 winners of each conference will face in the conference championships the following Sunday, with the NFC going first and the AFC going second. All right, let's get to the NBA here a little bit. We'll give you the lines for the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks are 4.5-point favorite over Toronto. Brooklyn, 5.5 in San Antonio. Denver, 6.5 versus Portland. And the Clippers, 1.5 versus Philadelphia. 223 the total. Last night in the NBA, Jason Tatum and the Celtics beat up on the Hornets. Tatum had 51, 130 to 118 over Charlotte. The Bucks beat up on the Pacers, 132 to 119, even without Giannis. They cover their 6-point spread. Had them at first, but no Giannis. It's tough to take the Bucks. Cavaliers come back on the Pelicans. Donovan Mitchell strained his hamstring a little bit, 113 to 103. Pelicans +7, not the play there yesterday. Raptors in overtime beat the Knicks 123 to 121. And then the Warriors, after they go visit the White House, they take on the Wizards and they beat them by 9. Steph Curry had 41 last night for Golden State. They're starting to round into form. The Phoenix game, the exception in the last few weeks. They've been able to play well since then. San Antonio, Friday night. Chicago. In Chicago, they lost to on Sunday, and then yesterday on Martin Luther King Day in Washington, they beat up on the Wizards. The Hawks had a 24-point lead. The Heat made it close. Atlanta covered -1 or +1, depending on when you got it. It ended up at -1 for Atlanta. That was my favorite of the day yesterday. Atlanta 121 to 113 over Miami. The Jazz come back on the Timberwolves, 126 to 125. The Grizzlies all over the Suns, 136 to 106. The over in that game, that got hit by about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then the Lakers, if you have the Lakers -7, thank you, Kenyon Martin Jr., for fouling. With a 6-point lead and 6 seconds to go, LeBron James, of all people, hits 2 free throws. They win by 8. They cover the 7 or 7.5. The game goes way over, 272. That was one of my picks yesterday. In fact, let me give you the scenario for Monday, the new week 3 of the year. 0-1 in the NFL, 4-2 in the NBA, 1-3 in college basketball, 2-0 in the NHL. We'll hit college basketball in a second, but overall 7-6 for the day. Last week ended up at 54-36. That's about 60%. In fact, that's right on 60% for the week. Overall, about 58% so far. But the goal is to get higher than that, move your way up to the 65 to 70 percentile deal. College basketball has been tough to start. In fact, let's get to college basketball here a little bit. In the ACC, we've got a few games going on tonight. Notre Dame, a 5-point favorite over Florida State. North Carolina, 14-point favorite over BC. North Carolina State, 6-point favorite at Georgia Tech. And Wake Forest, a 3-point favorite against Clemson Saturday. Monday, Miami barely beat Syracuse. They were a 7-point favorite, 82-78 the final there. Saturday, NC State in overtime over Miami. So Miami had a big weekend this weekend. North Carolina all over Louisville. Pitt beat Georgia Tech. They're very good in the ACC. Keep an eye on Pitt as the ACC conference goes on. Virginia did not cover 10 against Florida State. They won by 9 against the Seminoles. Clemson, a 1-point underdog against Duke. Duke is not as good as they were the last few years. Clemson's very good. They beat Duke in comeback fashion on Saturday evening. Syracuse did not cover 5.5 against Notre Dame. Notre Dame 78-73. Syracuse over Notre Dame. Wake Forest 85-63 over Boston College. So there you have it for the ACC. Moving on to the American, we've got one game in the American. It's Houston at number 1 in the country, a 10.5-point favorite at Tulane, 145.5 the total. Tulane, very good. Recapping the weekend, Memphis beat Temple 61-59, and South Florida over East Carolina as an underdog, 81-70. The Big Ten, one game today is Wisconsin and Purdue. Wisconsin a 3.5-point favorite, 129.5 yesterday in the Big Ten. Purdue came out with a victory against Michigan State. Illinois, a big win over Minnesota, 78-60. Sunday, 3 games. Michigan beat up on Northwestern, covered that game. Rutgers covered Ohio State, 68-64, and Maryland loses to Iowa. Saturday, Wisconsin got blown out by Indiana, 63-45 in that game. Wisconsin, a 5-point underdog, did not have one of their big guys there. Big 12, Kansas 1.5-point favorite at Kansas State. That's a big rivalry. Kansas and Kansas State, both teams playing well. Number 2 versus number 13. Kansas State got beat up on Saturday by TCU, 82-68. Oklahoma 1-point win over West Virginia. Kansas 62-60 over Iowa State. Iowa State covered +7. Oklahoma State got beat up by Baylor. This is the first week Baylor has not been in the top 25 since 2013. 365 weeks, 365 weeks, I think I read, where Baylor has not been in the top 25. And then Texas got a 2-point victory over Texas Tech. They did not cover. So Kansas at Kansas State, Iowa State hosting Texas, a 2.5-point favorite there. And then Texas Tech -2 versus Baylor. That's in the Big 12. Big East, only one game. Creighton, a 7-point favorite at Butler yesterday in the Big East. Villanova, only a 4-point win over Georgetown. Georgetown still hasn't won a conference game in nearly 16 months, and it's been very tough on them, but they cover the 14.5 against Villanova, who has not played well this year to begin with, but they were able to get the win in comeback fashion. They were down 6 at one point to Georgetown late in that game. Sunday, UConn got upset by St. John's, a 14-point favorite, 85-74, and then Xavier, a 3.5-point favorite over Marquette. Marquette had a chance to win that game. They had a 9-point lead. They lose 80-76. Not good for me there. And then Saturday in the Big East, DePaul loses to Seton Hall. That was a push, +4 for DePaul, 71-67. And then Creighton, 73-67 over Providence on Saturday as well. So there you have it. Providence with the cover against Creighton. I believe Creighton was a 7-point favorite in that game. 7.5-point favorite. Providence stayed within the 7 points and did cover. Tuesday, we got the one game, Creighton at Butler. Butler just beat Villanova Friday night. 79-71. So there's your Big East. There's your Big East action. The MAC Conference, Buffalo and Bowling Green. Buffalo, 6.5-point favorite. Miami of Ohio, 7 over Northern Illinois. Akron, a 9-point favorite at Central Michigan. The Ball State, 9.5 at versus Western Michigan. Kent State, 13.5 at Eastern Michigan. And Toledo, a 9-point favorite versus Ohio University. The Mid-American Conference, the MAC, 6 games. Saturday, Bowling Green lost to Western Michigan. Miami of Ohio lost to Ball State. Central Michigan in overtime over Buffalo. Buffalo was favored in that game. And Toledo over Northern Illinois. Not a lot of action, not a lot to talk about in the MAC, but just want to make you aware this is one of the conferences we follow. Kent State right now leads the top at 4-0, and Ball State at 3-1, Akron at 3-1. Those are your top 3 teams in the Mid-American Conference. The Missouri Valley Conference, very underrated conference, has a couple of games going today. Valparaiso, a 3-point favorite over University of Illinois Chicago. Southern Illinois, who leads that conference, they are very good. They're 6-2 along with Belmont and Indiana State, who lost over the weekend. They're all 6-2 fighting it out in the Missouri Valley Conference. Belmont, a 7-point favorite versus Murray State. 143 the total. Murray State at 5-3 in the conference. They just moved into the conference, both Belmont and Murray State. But it's a very interesting scenario for the Missouri Valley Conference. They're a very underrated conference. Sunday, Missouri State held off Indiana State, one of the big wins for Missouri State on Sunday. And then Saturday, Murray State with a big win, Valparaiso big win, Belmont by 4 over Northern Iowa. They covered the 3. Belmont's very good. I've had them twice in my best bet section, so keep an eye out on Belmont as we get closer to February and March. Southern Illinois over Illinois State. They lead the conference. And then Drake by 25 over Bradley. Drake's very good as well, too. Drake right now is 5-3. They're a game back in the Missouri Valley Conference. So not a lot. We don't talk a lot about the Missouri Valley Conference, but just wanted to give you a heads up that they're part of the deal here in terms of wagering and action. And, hey, all games pay 110, as I always tell people. So it doesn't matter who you take. It could be the number 1, number 2, or it could be number 125 against number 126. The Mountain West Conference, a few games today. Boise State, 5.5 over UNR. Utah State, 7 over UNLV. Air Force, 4.5 versus Wyoming. And New Mexico, a 10-point favorite versus my Spartans, San Jose State. That game will be 9 o'clock on Fox Sports 1 tonight. That's part of a doubleheader that Fox Sports 1 has. Creighton and Butler will be the first game of that doubleheader. But the Mountain West, Saturday, Colorado State covered a 5.5 against UNLV with a win in overtime. Air Force beat Fresno State by 3 in a low-scoring game. New Mexico upset number 23 San Diego State as an 8-point underdog, 76-67. And then Wyoming, 85-68 losers to Boise State. Standings-wise, For those of you that don't follow these conferences, I know most of you know the big ones, the power conferences. Nevada at 5-1, Boise State at 4-1, San Diego State 4-1, and then New Mexico, Utah State, San Jose State at 3-2. Those are the top half of the brackets. Air Force at 2-3 tonight, and then that's followed by Colorado State, who got the big win over UNLV the other day. UNLV is starting to slump a little bit, even though they're near the top, or UNLV is near the bottom now at 1-4. So maybe the real UNLV coming out in Wyoming 0-5 in conference play. All right, the SEC, the last conference we'll hit, is like this. The SEC has 4 games tonight. Good matchups. Mississippi is a 6-point favorite at South Carolina, 129.5. Tennessee, who lost to Kentucky at home, is an 11-point favorite, got upset by the Wildcats at home. 6-point favorite at Mississippi State. Alabama, 8.5-point favorite versus Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. Alabama may be the best team in the country. Right now, they are number 4 in the rankings, 154.5 the total. And Kentucky, 11-point favorite versus Georgia, 133.5. Georgia just came up with a big victory. They beat Ole Miss on the road, 62-58 as an underdog. Told you about the Kentucky-Tennessee game. Vanderbilt upset Arkansas, 97-84. Florida ended up covering. They were down big to Missouri to start, but they ended up covering 73-64 over Missouri. Alabama by 40 over LSU, 106-66. Texas A&M by 41 over South Carolina, and then Auburn, a 6-point victory against Mississippi State. Don't foul at the end of the game when you're trying to cover 7.5 points. I know that doesn't matter to them, but that was my game, 7.5 points. Auburn gave up 2 free throws at the end and could not do anything about it. 69-63, the final score, Auburn over Mississippi State. So there's your college basketball for Tuesday. Let's hit the hockey here a little bit before we get out of here. Minnesota, 130 at Washington, 6 the total. Toronto versus Florida, 175, 6.5 there. Winnipeg, 255 at Montreal, 6 the total. Philadelphia and Anaheim, 205 for Philadelphia, 6 there. 210 for Nashville versus Columbus, 6.5. Buffalo, 180 at Chicago, 6.5 there. Detroit, 130 at Arizona, 6 there. Edmonton, 180 versus the Red Hot Kraken, though they lost yesterday at home to Tampa Bay. Back-to-back nights for Seattle, 6.5 the total. The home teams are favored by 125. Net difference in goals, that's your grand salami, is at 50.5 for the number of games that are there. That sounds about right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 games, 50.5 your grand salami. Total number of goals, either pick over or under in terms of that. All right, so that's your NHL. Monday, we go back a little bit on Monday, a full schedule. Boston's red hot. They shut out Philadelphia. Florida Panthers beat Buffalo 4-1. Avalanche 6-3 over the Red Wings. New Jersey Devils, they are red hot. They got a goal with 9 seconds left to tie the game, and then won in the shootout, 4-3 over the Sharks. Told you about the Lightning and the Kraken. Lightning 4-1 over Seattle. 2 empty net goals with the difference in that game for the bigger difference. Stars 4-0 over Vegas. The Rangers 3-1 over Columbus. The Penguins in overtime over the Ducks 4-3. The Capitals in overtime over the Islanders 4-3. Nashville 2-1 over Calgary. Calgary is favored in that game. And St. Louis got a 2-1 victory over Ottawa. So a big day of Martin Luther King Day of hockey, NBA, college basketball. The Wildcard game last night in Tampa Bay where the Cowboys won. The NFL weekend had a big weekend with San Francisco, Jacksonville winning Saturday. The Buffalo Bills, the New York Giants, Cincinnati Bengals all winning Sunday, and, of course, Tampa Bay Monday. It's all set up for next weekend. Kansas City, Jacksonville, Philadelphia, and the Giants for the 3rd time this year. That's Saturday. Buffalo, Cincinnati, Sunday. San Francisco, Dallas, Sunday evening as well, too. Don't forget, we'll be back on Thursday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, an NFL preview of the divisional weekend. More NBA previews, a little recap of Tuesday and Wednesday's NBA action, NCAA as well, too. You get into the weekend conference play. Saturdays are always big in the NCAA. And then the NHL continues its season. The NBA and NHL about halfway through their season. The Daily Post every day during the week, 6 Eastern. Sponsorships are available. Contact me directly through YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can get me at VPartySports. I'm Vasti Vadaparty. That is the VPartySports Podcast for this Tuesday. Have a great day. Don't forget the Daily Post at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'll have your best bets segment. Right now, before I leave you, I'm going to give you a couple of best bets to go with, and then I'll give you the rest on the Daily Post at 6 Eastern. Tonight in college basketball, Utah State, they are going up against UNLV. We saw UNLV struggling at 1-4, 7-point favorite for Utah State. Lay the big dollars on Utah State. And then I know Houston's number 1 in the country, but Tulane's at home, and they played well. They're a 10.5-point underdog against a very good Houston Cougar team, but Tulane is very good. Take the 10.5 in Tulane tonight against Houston. It's going to be a closer game than people think. All right, the rest of the best bets tonight at 6 Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Vasi VParty. That's the VParty Sports Podcast for this Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good luck with your games. Good luck with your fantasy action. And we will see you on Thursday at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific for another edition of the VParty Sports Podcast. Have a great day, everybody.